Hey everyone, welcome to this special bonus episode of Gaslit Nation. I am your host, Andrea Chalupa, a journalist and filmmaker, and the writer and producer of the journalistic thriller Mr. Jones, about Stalin's genocide famine in Ukraine, a genocide that is repeating today under Putin. I am joined in this special bonus episode by Olga Lautman and Monique Camarra of the Essential Kremlin File podcast. We debate whether Mike Johnson, the Kremlin bot Speaker of the House, the little tiny doll in the center of the Russian nesting doll of MAGA, whether he's serious about actually bringing Ukraine aid to a vote when Congress is back at work, finally funded by our taxpayer dollars. So is Mike Johnson really going to do it? Or is he just full of it because who he's really serving is serving the Kremlin? And there's zero intention, and he's just dragging things out and playing Lucy's football with Ukraine's Charlie Brown and the Democratic Party's Charlie Brown and the majority of the American public that supports Ukraine, despite Elon Musk and the rest of the Kremlin disinformation war. So let's see. Olga and I go back and forth. You definitely want to stick to the very end of this episode where Olga shares some rousing remarks that need to be blasted on loudspeakers throughout the halls of Congress. I have to choose my word carefully when saying blasted in reference to Congress after there was a violent assault there where members of Congress were being hunted down by Trump's brown shirts. All right. And just a reminder to the folks who support the show at the truth teller level or higher on Patreon, we are doing a special workshop for you, which is a follow-up to our popular Make Art workshop that came out last November, where I shared all the secret hot sauce ingredients of writing a screenplay, a first draft that reads like a third draft. And that could be applied to novels, nonfiction work, and so on. And so in this follow-up workshop that I promised back then, it's now coming up for you now this month of April on Thursday, April 11 at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is on the business side of things. I'm going to share how I got Mr. Jones kickstarted without any Hollywood connections and not really knowing at all what I was doing and grasping in the dark and figuring things out. So I'm going to share just my checklist of business strategies to get your art out there in the world in a meaningful way that's authentic to you. I love this list. It's what I follow with all my projects. So come to that. If you are not signed up, you can get your ticket at patreon.com/gaslit. That's patreon.com/gaslit. And now here is our special bonus episode looking at what may be ahead in Congress, as well as debating whether NATO should finally send troops to Ukraine. Yes, and there's some compelling arguments being made in this discussion, and I hope you will listen to it with an open mind. Thank you to everyone who supports the show. We could not make Gaslit Nation without you. If there's anything you'd like to contribute to this conversation, leave us a comment, send an email to gaslitnation@gmail.com, and your comments, your questions may be read on the show in an upcoming episode.
Can I just ask you guys both a question? Because I think an even stronger signal that we're seeing now is what is happening in the Congress, specifically in the Senate. I guess it has to go to Congress with the Ukraine aid bill. Okay, with that, which I think is incredible how Speaker Johnson said, well, yeah, we talked together. I mean, we have him on tape saying, sure, this is... And he's taking orders from someone who is an unelected person. I don't get it. I really don't get how. Is there not a law against that? Wasn't the Logan Act something that was supposed to be used against this kind of thing? Or am I off base, first of all? Second, the narrative that they're using that it's up to the Europeans now because we've given enough, which is one of the narratives that was born after the Second World War. You can go back and read all of the Lippmans and, all of those kind of people who brought that kind of narrative forward. They're not doing enough. They're not doing enough. I'm sitting here in front of a post by Razum, Andrea, and which says that the government support to Ukraine by country in groupings, the EU is 144 billion. The United States is 67.7 billion, which has come out. Now, obviously, We would have to add to the United States, obviously, the kind of money and infrastructure that they have been keeping in Europe for all of these years. Okay, but in terms of Ukraine, what is going on? Let me ask the two of you, because you guys have a handle on what's going on in Congress. What is going on with that? Because this is probably the moment where the United States needs to step up. I mean, besides helping Ukraine, which is the most fundamental thing, on the other side, the damage that is being done to their image, to the image of the United States, is severe. It's something that cannot be underestimated. You know, if I'm Japan sitting out there saying, well, I don't know, are they going to come to our aid or not? Right? Think about it. Think about the effect that this kind of thing, turning your back on a country that is fighting a war against your enemy, your adversary, and you're not stepping up. Let's remember what happened in 1972. Congress did the exact same thing with the South Vietnamese. They pulled all of the funding for, and aid. Lethal and non-lethal, both of them. So give us an update on what is happening, if there's any hope that maybe in the next little while something will happen.
Well, Mike Johnson is holding off as long as he can to deprive Ukraine life-saving aid to protect itself from an actual genocide. He himself, as we've talked about in the show, has accepted Kremlin-linked money. He's on the payroll. He was mentored by Jim Jordan, a MAGA attack dog in the House, who is very much in the pocket of Trump and the larger Russian operation. And so now you have this dynamic where his power to serve the Kremlin, to serve MAGA in the House, has been weakened by 2 resignations of Republicans in recent weeks, which gives him a single member majority over the Democrats in the House. Unfortunately, the Republicans are very good at ruling like a dictatorship, even when they're outnumbered. He doesn't care that he just has an advantage of 1 member in this very, very tight breakdown of power in the House. He's going to rule like he has a super majority. That's how the Republicans operate. The Democrats don't do that. Democrats in Congress are all consensus driven, and it's horrible. In states like Minnesota and Michigan that have very narrow Democratic majorities, they do rule like that. And they've been able to pass a lot of wonderful laws and quality of life initiatives to improve quality of life for their voters. And it's a wonderful thing to see. But in Congress, the Democrats don't do that. The Republicans do. And so people like to say that Mike Johnson has a gun to his head because MAGA Queen Marjorie Taylor Greene made the initial moves to launch a vote to call for a new speaker. And all she needs are just a couple more Republicans to sign on to this, and that would force a new speaker vote. She easily has that support with Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan and some other whack jobs like Andy Biggs and so on in the House. And what the Democrats could do is bail out Mike Johnson, saying, look, if there is another speaker vote, we'll vote for you. Just get this damn Ukraine aid passed. And I have no doubt that we've reached that level because Mike Johnson is teasing, I would say, with this idea that Ukraine aid may come to pass. Mike Johnson is like a Ken doll in the Congress. He wants to look the part of a congressman, but inside he's Marjorie Taylor Greene. He comes from Louisiana, which is a state with some of the worst human rights records in the entire union. Louisiana constantly ranks in last on all sort of human rights metrics, including prison population, criminal system abuse, and so on and so on. The list goes. That's where he came from. That's how he operates. That's who he is. And he's just teasing Democrats and Ukraine supporters, acting like he's a reasonable person, that he's going to do anything when in reality he's not. The best hope for Ukraine aid is a movement that Razom for Ukraine, that wonderful human rights group that we all know well. We know their organizers quite well. They've been around since the 2013, 2014 Euromaidan revolution in Ukraine. One thing that Razom is really pushing is for Democrats and Republicans to unite, to force a vote. And there's roughly 30 votes more needed to force a vote. Unfortunately, several progressives have not signed on to this. I think the concern is that with Ukraine aid getting passed, that would be a gateway to Israeli military aid for more weapons for Israel going through as well. So progressives are holding back on going that route. So really the best bet would be another 2 Republicans resigning and giving the majority to the Democrats. But unfortunately, all those Republicans in power are all moral cowards. They're all in it for the power, for the greed, and they won't do that. So I don't have a lot of faith that Mike Johnson can be successfully pressured to do the right thing and hold a vote. I really don't, unless there's something behind the scenes that I'm not aware of. Unfortunately, it's really going to have to fall to Ukraine's allies to fill the gap until we have new elections in 2024 that would elect an all-new House. But I think what everyone's witnessing now, with MAGA having such tight control over the purse, and also investigations, like show trial, banana republic level investigations, weaponizing the House against Biden and his family and so on. I think it really goes to show that we should never allow the Republicans to ever hold power in the House again, because this is how they operate. And it's a reminder to all of us that they're just not allowed to have power there anymore. Like, I don't know how we stop that. The path to stopping that is in New York, where there's some easy pickups here for Democrats if we can get our act together. But so that's where things stand. I'm very pessimistic that Mike Johnson's actually going to be pushed to do a deal. I doubt it. I want to believe it. But that's my take on things. Olga might feel differently.
I am actually a drop more optimistic because in February, I deal with people in DC, and I was told as soon as we get through the shit show of the budget to get the government funded, not the week by week by week budget, but a final budget, that the vote was going to come to the floor in some capacity or not. And then, as a matter of fact, before they called a recess at like 1:30 in the afternoon, if we all had jobs like this, and before even Marjorie Taylor, like when she filed her, motion to be heard when they come back, there were already discussions that as soon as they come back from recess, that they will deal with Ukraine aid. That is the number one priority. So I might be wrong, but from everything I've, heard, and pretty much it is going this way, that as soon as now that this government budget is done and our government is funded, at least for several months, not extending week by week, that Ukraine is next. So I do think that they come back next week, and I think by somewhere mid-month, we will see some kind of vote on the floor. Johnson himself has said this in January to Voice of America. He said he was going to bring Ukraine as soon as the government is funded. He spoke with Zelensky last week, and they had a long call. And then after that, he said that, he sees the importance of it. We'll see. I mean, this is a matter of a few weeks. I think that it will move through. Then now what Andrea was talking about is there are two petitions, discharge petitions on the floor. One was brought by the Republican side. One was brought by the Democratic side. On the Republican side, they barely received, if they have 17 signatures or something like that. That's a lot. On the Democratic side, they have, I believe last count was like 188. You need 215 or something like that, or 18.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Problem is that we have 30 plus Democrats who are refusing to sign it. If they would have signed it, we would already have this. And only one Republican who signed, which was Ken Buck. On his way out, on his last day that Friday when they went into recess, he was the first Republican to sign off. I am hearing, though, that if Johnson doesn't put the HACO bill on the floor, the Senate bill onto the floor, that there are Republicans waiting in the wings, and that they will, as a last option, throw their signatures onto this. The Democratic discharge petition, because of the fact that it is the one closest to what is needed to bring the floor to the vote. So I think I'm a drop more optimistic with that.
I hope you're right, Olga. One thing I wanted to comment on, what you pointed out, was that Mike Johnson, even after talking to Zelensky, still holds Ukraine aid hostage as a bargaining chip to try to force.
He was in recess, in all fairness. I mean, they're in recess. He talked to him last week. They're in recess until April 9th. The House does not return from recess until April 9th. So they can't have any motions or do anything, frankly, until they come back.
Couldn't they call them back?
Yeah, he could. Yes, you absolutely can call them back into session. They don't like that because they're busy fundraising.
But no, delay tactics. This is so clear to all of us. I'm sitting from the other side of the Atlantic going, come on, when you want to do something, you do it. Otherwise, I personally believe these are delay tactics. I hope, Olga, with all my heart, because this stuff is really needed.